Chapter 1. A City of Ghosts. Rain hammered against Michael Shaw's windshield, turning the city streets into a shimmering maze of headlights and neon reflections. He guided his old sedan through puddles that splashed the curb, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. It wasn't just the storm making him tense, it was the unshakable feeling that the city itself was watching him tonight. Tall buildings loomed overhead, like silent sentinels. Between them, dirty alleys yawned open, strewn with trash bags and flickering streetlights that cast restless shadows on the wet pavement. The wipers thumped in a steady rhythm, and each squeak made Michael's nerves jangle. He breathed a little harder than usual, every sense on alert. His police badge, clipped to the interior pocket of his coat, seemed heavier than normal. Most nights he took a certain grim satisfaction in the role of detective, being the one people turned to for answers. But tonight, he felt only the creeping dread of another call that might drag him closer to the darkness he carried inside. As he neared the address, an abandoned building in one of the city's most forsaken neighborhoods, Michael spotted the flash of red and blue lights reflecting off rain-slick brick. Yellow tape swayed and snapped in the wind like it was trying to break free. The building's broken windows looked like crooked teeth, framing an empty grin in the gloom. He parked, stepped out, and pulled the collar of his coat high against the rain. Water dripped from the brim of his hat as he made his way under the tape. An officer, a young man who still had the uncertain look of a rookie, lifted it for him, his eyes filled with the apprehension that came before stepping into a nightmare. "Detective Shaw," the young officer said, voice trembling only slightly. "They're waiting for you inside." Michael nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. His mind was already running through the usual checklist: secure the scene, examine the body, question the witnesses, if any. But something deeper prickled at him, an intuition he'd never managed to shake. Inside, the building smelled of mildew and rot, a stale dampness that clung to the walls. Muffled voices bounced off the cracked concrete floors as flashlights swerved, illuminating more signs of decay. In the center of the room, several officers circled a body sprawled in a grotesque position. Michael paused for a moment, steadying himself. The victim lay in a pool of half-dried blood, eyes vacant, mouth contorted in an eternal scream. Hand-drawn symbols adorned the walls, scrawled in what looked like more blood. They were arcane spirals and jagged shapes, suggesting a ritualistic element. His heart thumped harder. This wasn't a random killing. It was something carefully orchestrated. Crouching beside the body, Michael forced himself to remain detached, though he could feel a cold coil of dread settling in his stomach. Then the whisper came, soft, insistent, threading into his consciousness with chilling familiarity. "The storm is coming. He is the one who cannot be stopped." He tensed, shutting his eyes as the words pressed against the inside of his skull. This was his curse, hearing the final, unfinished thoughts of the dead. On good days, it gave him clues that saved lives. On bad days, it felt like it was unmaking him from the inside. "Michael?" a voice cut in. Detective Elliot Russo stood a few feet away, arms folded. He was stocky, with a perpetually skeptical look. Their partnership thrived on friction. Michael, with his uncanny instincts, and Elliot, the grounded rationalist. "You've been staring at that body a while," Elliot said, frown lines deepening. "You okay?" Michael stood, brushing grit from his knees. "Just taking it in." "Right." Elliot studied him for a beat, then turned to the blood-splattered walls. "This is different from our usual mess. Looks ritualistic. We have officers checking out the symbols, but it'll take time to decipher." Michael tore his gaze from the victim, swallowing back the lingering echo of the dead person's final words. He is the one who cannot be stopped. He wondered if it pointed to some unknown killer, or something worse. "This wasn't random," he said quietly. "Whoever did this wanted us to see it. It's just the start." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You've got more than a hunch?" Michael hesitated. He couldn't exactly tell Elliot about the voice. "I can feel it," he said instead, voice tight. "This is big." Elliot exhaled sharply and flipped open his notepad. Then let's find some facts to back it up, Shaw. Nodding absently, Michael turned his gaze back to the body. Even though the victim's eyes no longer focused on anything in this world, Michael felt a near electric pulse in the atmosphere, like the building itself was charged with leftover fear. That sense of grim anticipation stayed with him as he stepped back out into the downpour. The city lights smeared across the windshield of his car in red and blue streaks. "The storm is coming," the voice had whispered. As he drove away, the tires spraying water across a city that seemed perpetually drowning in secrets, Michael couldn't stop hearing that low, persistent warning echo in his mind. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. Claire Emerson stared at the worn package on her kitchen table. Rain pinged against the window behind her, the storm from earlier still raging on. The old ribbon around the box was barely holding together, the handwriting on the label smudged. But one name stood out: Marianne Emerson, her mother. Claire's throat tightened. 6 months had passed since her mother died, but they hadn't spoken much for years before that. Now, here was one final memento, a cardboard time capsule from someone who had always been more enthralled by ancient symbols and death rituals than by her own daughter. A single lamp lit the small kitchen. The rest of her apartment was neat, almost sterile, exactly how Claire liked it. She thrived on order, possibly because her childhood had been so chaotic. Her mother's obsession with researching bizarre cults and ancient rites had filled their house with dusty books and cryptic notes. Claire swore she'd never follow that path. But curiosity gnawed at her. She slipped a knife under the ribbon and sliced it loose. Inside was an old manuscript bound together with loose pages. The smell of musty paper and a faint whiff of lavender perfume hit her, the scent her mother used to wear. It felt like a ghostly presence sliding into the room. She hesitated, flipping the cover page. "For Claire. I'm sorry. I hope this explains everything." "Explains what?" Claire whispered, her annoyance sparking. "Sorry for ignoring me all my life? Sorry for burying yourself in secrets?" She almost shoved the manuscript away, but something about that final apology tugged at her. Instead, she carried it to her living room and set it on a small desk by the window. The first pages were typed, but large chunks of text were crossed out and annotated by hand. Strange symbols decorated the margins. Some pages contained references to arcane practices, things Claire wanted nothing to do with, yet she couldn't stop reading. Her phone buzzed with social media notifications, but she ignored them. Rain thrummed on the window, matching the drumbeat of her anxiety. Immortality myths, secret societies, ritual sacrifices. The further she read, the more she recognized patterns similar to news stories about grisly murders in the city. She'd heard rumors about weird symbols at crime scenes, though she never paid them much mind. Claire flipped another page. "Beware the ones who gather in shadow, for they seek to control what cannot be contained." Her hand froze over the paragraph. Her mother had dedicated years to studying these twisted beliefs. Now, was it possible these murders were connected to the same symbols Marianne wrote about? By midnight, she was exhausted, but a jolt of adrenaline kept her awake. She caught a reflection of herself in the window, eyes ringed with tiredness, yet shining with a question she couldn't answer. Why did Mom leave this for me? She closed the manuscript, exhaling shakily. She wanted to pretend none of this mattered. But the memory of her mother's voice telling her bedtime stories of ancient civilizations and hidden cults wouldn't leave her alone. Her mother had always insisted there was more to the world than people wanted to believe. Claire set the manuscript aside, promising herself she'd return to it in the morning, if only to prove to herself that it was just another dead-end hobby of her mother's. Yet deep down, she sensed that this was the start of something she wasn't ready to face. Outside, the storm slammed the window, like it was demanding to be let in. Chapter 3. Hidden Threads. Morning brought little relief. The rain dwindled to a cold drizzle, leaving the streets glistening under pale sunlight. Claire sipped lukewarm coffee at her kitchen table, eyes locked on the manuscript spread out before her. Sleep had come fitfully, full of half-remembered dreams about flickering candles and whispered voices. The first page she read that morning contained a handwritten note from her mother. "The storm is a warning. The bloodline must be protected." Claire's stomach twisted. Bloodline? She flipped pages faster, scanning paragraphs about secret societies that practiced dark rituals for power and immortality. Names she vaguely recalled from her childhood cropped up, people who visited their home or sent cryptic letters to Marianne. A new sense of dread settled over her. If her mother's research was tied to the current murders, that meant these crimes weren't random. They were part of some twisted design. And if her mother had insisted the Emerson bloodline was important, could that mean, I'm part of this? She shut the book, feeling a tingle of paranoia. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, suddenly felt exposed. She walked to the window, peering through the rain-splattered glass at the street below. A bus hissed to a stop, unloading passengers with half-asleep expressions. A dog walker wrangled 4 different leashes. Normal life carried on, oblivious to the knowledge that had just turned her world upside down. Half an hour later, she resumed her reading. She stumbled upon a passage describing detailed symbols that matched the photos circulating in the news, symbols found at grisly crime scenes. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Her phone buzzed, a text from a coworker linking to the latest article on the murders. The detective leading the investigation was named Michael Shaw. The article hinted at strange ritualistic elements. Claire's chest tightened. Could he need information from me or from this manuscript? She spent the rest of the morning combing through her mother's notes, cross-referencing them with online articles. Page after page connected to the city's recent murders. The patterns were undeniable. Repeated symbols, references to an old cult rumored to have roots in Europe centuries ago. And there, in bold script, was her own family name. By evening, her mind was a blur of questions. Was her mother complicit in some way or trying to stop it? Guilt and anger fought for space in Claire's thoughts. If these murders were connected to my mother's research, then she must have known something dangerous. On impulse, she scrolled her phone until she found the number for the city's homicide division. It took courage, or desperation, to dial. She got transferred twice before she reached the voicemail for Detective Michael Shaw. She hesitated. Detective, my name is Claire Emerson. I think I might have information on the ritual murders. Her voice trembled. She ended the message, her heart hammering. God, what am I doing? But she couldn't unmake that call. Either she was walking into the same nightmare that had haunted her mother's life, or she was about to help stop something truly horrific. She looked at the manuscript one more time before pushing it aside. Rain tapped on the window again, as if the storm was far from finished. She turned off the lights, letting shadows stretch across the pages. If Detective Shaw called back, there would be no turning back. Chapter 4. A Growing Rift. Michael's desk was cluttered with crime scene photos, half-empty coffee cups, and sticky notes scrawled with leads. He sat in the precinct's cramped office space, hardly noticing the bustle of fellow detectives around him. A dull headache throbbed behind his eyes, remnants of the onslaught of voices last night. He picked up a photo of the latest victim, the symbols in blood, the twisted posture of the body. There had to be a pattern. He'd spent the morning trying to decode them, rummaging through old case files with tangentially similar cult-like homicides. Nothing seemed to match. Elliot Russo dropped into the chair opposite him, letting out a low whistle. Still at it, huh? You've been sifting through these for hours. Find anything? Michael rubbed his temples. Not enough. These symbols, I've never seen anything like it. Elliot leaned forward, arms on his knees. That's not the only thing bothering you, is it? You look like you haven't slept. Don't tell me it's just the case. It's the case, Michael said curtly. He didn't mention the voice that invaded his mind whenever he got too close to the dead, or how the victim's last words kept replaying. He is the one who cannot be stopped. Sharing that with Elliot would only stoke more suspicion. Elliot's jaw tightened. Something's off with you lately. I've been your partner long enough to notice. Michael flipped a photo of the graffiti-like symbols, avoiding Elliot's gaze. Look, the city's in a panic. The media is already labeling this the ritual killer. If we don't close this soon, the brass will have our heads. Maybe, Elliot said, exhaling. But you've been distracted, more than usual. Michael didn't respond. Their partnership had always been tense. Elliot was a straight talker, a facts guy. Michael relied on gut feelings he couldn't fully explain. And lately those gut feelings had a supernatural source. Before Elliot could press further, Michael's phone buzzed. He checked the voicemail. A calm, cautious female voice. My name is Claire Emerson. I think I might have information on the ritual murders. Michael's eyebrows rose. He replayed the message, scribbling the name on a notepad. Then he grabbed his coat and stood. Where are you going? Elliot asked. Got a lead, Michael said. A possible witness or informant. Elliot frowned. Mind sharing the details? Michael hesitated. Not until I know if it's legit. Elliot's frustration was palpable. Fine. Just don't go running off the grid. We have a job to do, together. Michael forced a tight smile. I'll keep you posted. He left Elliot behind, feeling a stab of guilt. But the last thing he wanted was to drag his partner into something that might expose his secret. The tension between them was growing, and Michael feared it would snap soon. Outside, the clouds churned across the sky like a brewing storm. He dialed Claire Emerson's number, wondering who she was and why she sounded so nervous. An odd sense of anticipation prickled the back of his neck, as if the puzzle pieces he'd been chasing were finally about to align. Chapter 5. Crossing Paths. Claire waited anxiously at Solomon's Cafe, a small, cozy spot tucked between a bookstore and a florist. She clutched a lukewarm mug of tea, ignoring the bustle around her. She'd only left Detective Shaw one voicemail. She hadn't expected him to call back so quickly, let alone arrange a meeting the very next day. Her foot tapped against the table leg. Maybe she shouldn't have come. Maybe this detective would laugh at her or consider her an unreliable source. But she had the manuscript, and it practically screamed ritual murder. She needed answers. When the door chimed, Claire looked up to see a man with tired eyes and a dark coat scanning the room. Something about him, maybe the set of his jaw or the tension in his shoulders, identified him as a detective before he even flashed his badge. Claire Emerson? He asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She nodded, trying to steady her voice. Detective Shaw, thanks for meeting me. He studied her, gaze lingering on the manuscript poking out of her bag. You said you have information on the murders. Claire swallowed hard, pushing the manuscript toward him. These are my mother's notes. She studied secret societies and rituals, I guess you could call them. Some of what I've read matches the symbols in the murder reports. Michael opened the manuscript carefully. The pages crackled with age, scrawled with annotations, symbols, half-translated text. His face remained impassive, but Claire noticed his eyes flickering with intense interest. Your mother, Michael said. Marianne Emerson? Claire nodded. She passed away 6 months ago. We were estranged, but I've been going through her things, and there's a lot in here about immortality myths, blood sacrifices, societies that claim to cheat death. She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. And some of it sounds like what's happening with these murders. Michael's fingers tightened on the manuscript. The cafe's chatter seemed to recede, leaving them in a bubble of tension. You think these notes can help identify the killer? Claire inhaled shakily. I don't know, but the symbols, they match. And there's all this talk of a final ritual that needs certain elements to work. My mother believed there was a group trying to harness something. Michael glanced up, sympathy flickering in his eyes. Your mother might have been onto something, or maybe she was in danger because of it. Those words twisted in Claire's chest. In danger? Had her mother known she was risking her life by delving into these dark studies? She cleared her throat, shoving back the sting of tears. I need to know if my mother's work was connected to these murders. If she was involved, or if she was trying to stop it. Michael paused, then nodded. I'll take this seriously. But you realize this could put you at risk? If the people behind these murders learn you have information. Claire's stomach did a somersault. I don't have a choice. If my mother was tied to this, I have to know why. And if the police can use this to stop more killings, then I'll help. Something like respect sparked in Michael's eyes. All right, let's piece this together. He carefully slipped a few pages into a folder. I'll have our forensic team look at the symbols. In the meantime, I'd like to keep in touch in case we need more. She nodded, feeling the tension in her limbs begin to uncoil. Thank you. They exchanged contact information. Before leaving, Michael lingered, as if weighing whether to say something more personal. Finally, he offered a small, tight smile. I appreciate your help, Claire, and sorry about your mother. Emotion fluttered in her chest. Grief, regret, relief. She managed a nod. Thank you. Michael left, and Claire exhaled shakily, heart pounding. She felt like she just crossed a threshold into a deeper world of secrets. The storm outside had diminished to a soft drizzle, but inside, the sense of an impending reckoning felt stronger than ever. Chapter 6. The Deeper We Go. Michael returned to the precinct with Claire's manuscript tucked securely under one arm. Rain dripped from his coat onto the linoleum floor. He headed straight for his desk, ignoring Elliot's curious stare. Instead, he dove into the pages of the manuscript again, scanning cryptic passages about hidden societies and unspeakable rites. Around him, the office buzzed with routine chatter, ringing phones, clacking keyboards, a snatch of conversation about a different case. But Michael was in another zone entirely. Symbols on certain pages glowed in his mind, echoing the scene photos of the murders. The repeated references to bloodlines and chosen sacrifices made his stomach turn. Occasionally, the hairs on his neck prickled as though someone was breathing down his collar. He couldn't tell if it was the curse of hearing the dead or simply mounting paranoia. Every so often, he heard a faint whisper, half-formed words from victims who no longer had tongues to speak. Elliot eventually approached, arms folded. Care to fill me in on what you're obsessing over? Without looking up, Michael muttered, Found some research that might tie into the killings. Ritual stuff. Ritual stuff. Elliot's tone dripped skepticism. So we're going there now? Dark magic? Sacrifices under a blood moon? Michael finally met Elliot's gaze. Look, I get it sounds crazy, but these murders aren't random. The symbols, the staging, there's a reason behind them. And if we find that reason, we might find our killer. Elliot sighed, tapping a finger on the desk. Fine. Show me what you got. They spent the next hour cross-referencing details from the manuscript with crime scene reports. As they dug deeper, Elliot's skepticism eroded into uneasy silence. The matching patterns were unmistakable. Certain repeated glyphs, the method of blood spatter, the victim's posture. It was all pointing to some group playing with death like a cat toys with a mouse. Damn, Elliot murmured finally. This is bigger than I thought. Michael didn't respond. His mind flitted back to Claire's haunted eyes. She'd seemed so determined, yet so hurt. He remembered how she'd mentioned her mother's obsession with immortality myths. Did Marianne Emerson die naturally, or was something else at play? The question twisted in his gut. As the evening stretched on, Michael could barely tear his eyes from the manuscript. A note in the margins read, Blood must be spilled to open the doorway. The bloodline cannot be broken or the ritual fails. He exhaled shakily. If someone was targeting a specific bloodline, could that mean Claire was in danger? He snapped the book shut. I need to check on something. Elliot raised an eyebrow. You really think there's a living link to these murders? Michael grabbed his coat. I can't risk ignoring it. I'll call you. Shaw, Elliot called after him, voice gruff but tinged with concern. Be careful. This is not just any case. Michael nodded, hurrying out. His skin prickled with the sense that every second ticking by was bringing them all closer to a final dreadful act. Chapter 7. Shadows at the Edge. Claire was restless in her apartment, the manuscript open on the coffee table. She'd reorganized her mother's notes, cross-referencing them with local news articles and any scattered tidbits she found online. The deeper she looked, the more she realized there was an entire subculture of people fixated on harnessing death's power. Night settled in, and the city lights blinked through her windows. She felt watched, as if the gloom itself had eyes. More than once, she glanced at the locked door, half expecting shadows to slither under it. A buzz from her phone jolted her. It was Detective Shaw. "Claire?" His voice was calm, but had an undertone of urgency. "I've gone through your mother's notes. Some of these references, they point to a final ritual that requires a specific bloodline. I need to ask, did your mother ever mention anything about you being at risk?" Heart pounding, Claire shook her head, then realized he couldn't see her. She never said it outright, but there are notes in the manuscript. She wrote about protecting me. I never took it seriously. Michael paused. "I want you to be careful. If these people are hunting a specific family line, you might be a target." A chill ran through her. She gazed around her apartment, every shadow looking sinister. "What do I do?" "Don't isolate yourself. Keep me updated if you notice anything strange. I'll let you know as we learn more." They hung up, and Claire sat in silence, mind reeling. If the killers were part of some ancient society that needed Emerson blood, then her mother's frantic research finally made sense. She'd been trying to shield Claire from a fate that had been in motion for generations. Unable to sit still, Claire opened her laptop to cross-check the ritual descriptions with historical references. As the hours ticked by, she learned that this cult, sometimes referred to as the Society for Eternal Night, surfaced throughout history wherever people sought to cheat death. Each time, they left a trail of bodies and cryptic symbols. Could they have latched onto her mother's research as a roadmap? Her eyes burned from staring at the screen. She typed Detective Shaw a message. "I found references to a group calling themselves the Watchers of the Veil. They believe in harnessing life force through sacrifice. They always need someone from a particular bloodline." She hesitated, then hit send. Part of her hated being dragged into this. Another part felt a fierce determination stirring. If these murders were linked to her mother's decades of research, she had to help stop whoever was behind them. Outside, the rain started again, pattering against the glass. Claire closed her eyes, exhaustion tugging at her. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she almost saw a flicker of candlelight and heard distant chanting. She opened her eyes, adrenaline spiking. The sense of dread wouldn't leave. "They're watching," her mother had written. "They wait until the time is right." Claire shivered. Even though the city's lights glowed outside, the night felt darker than ever. Chapter 8. Urgent Revelations. Michael's phone pinged with Claire's new message. The Watchers of the Veil. Particular bloodline. He read it twice, a sinking feeling settling in his gut. He'd come across a similar name in the footnotes of Claire Emerson's journal. The puzzle pieces were aligning, and the picture they formed was unsettling. He leaned over a colleague's desk in the research department, scanning old archives. "Anything on these Watchers of the Veil?" The woman tapped keys, frowning at the screen. A few historical references pop up, some 19th century articles about strange disappearances, rumors of occult gatherings. Nothing concrete. It's like they vanish as soon as attention turns on them. Michael rubbed his temples. So the group was adept at staying hidden. That meant they could be anywhere, possibly holding powerful positions behind the scenes. By mid-afternoon, the precinct hummed with typical tension. Elliot cornered Michael at the coffee station. "Heard you've been digging into some old cult references. You want to fill me in?" Claire Emerson's leads. Her mother's notes mention a society trying to achieve immortality. Some of our case details line up with her research. He sipped coffee, which was lukewarm and bitter. Elliot sighed. "This is insane. But the evidence, these symbols, the precision of the kills, it's hard to ignore." Michael nodded. "We need to locate where they might perform their final ritual. If we're right, they'll need Claire. They must know who she is, that she's her mother's daughter. She could be next. Elliot's expression darkened. So we move fast. Any idea where they might be hiding? Michael glanced at the files. We've got old, abandoned sites around the city that could fit the pattern. Large, secluded areas. Places that used to be cathedrals or have cryptic architecture. We start there. Before Elliot could respond, Michael's phone buzzed again. A text from Claire. We need to talk in person. Found something else in my mother's trunk. Journals referencing a final ceremony. Michael's pulse quickened. I have to go. Elliot raised an eyebrow. You keep saying that. Michael pulled on his coat. Stay on the leads here. I'll coordinate with you by phone. As he headed out, he couldn't shake the sense of a clock ticking down. Like the city itself was a giant hourglass, and every grain of sand brought them closer to an unspeakable culmination. Chapter 9. Convergence. Claire and Michael met in the dim corridor outside her apartment. The overhead light flickered ominously, reflecting Claire's jittery nerves. She clutched a small leather-bound journal that bore her mother's initials. Inside, they settled at Claire's kitchen table. Dishes from a hastily abandoned meal sat in the sink, the only sign of her usual neat habits gone awry. She opened the journal, revealing pages packed with frantic handwriting. I found this hidden in an old trunk. My mother wrote details about a final ceremony, the night when they'd perform the ultimate sacrifice for immortality. Michael's eyes narrowed. Any mention of when? Claire flipped through pages, scanning scribbled dates and cryptic references. There's something about a lunar eclipse. She references a date that's only 2 days away. I think they intend to complete the ritual under a specific celestial alignment. Michael felt cold. 2 days. So they're on a tight schedule. Claire nodded, voice trembling. Yeah. And here, she pointed to a passage describing the chosen sacrifice. The group believes they need the direct descendant of a bloodline who first made a pact centuries ago. My mother wrote about how she tried to break that lineage, but apparently, it didn't matter. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Claire was that descendant. If the cult believed they needed her blood, then she was the linchpin in their plan. Michael's jaw tightened. They'll come for you. Claire swallowed, trying to steady her breathing. I'm not helpless, but I need your help, detective. He nodded, empathizing with the terror beneath her calm facade. We stop them before they get the chance. He hesitated. I can't explain everything to you, but I have a way of understanding the victim's last moments. It helps me solve cases. She studied him, curiosity mingled with worry. You mean those instincts you mentioned? Michael almost told her about hearing the dead. Instead, he said, it's complicated, but it's real, and I believe you about the danger. Claire closed the journal. So what's our plan? Michael leaned forward, forging a strategy. We need to check potential sites where they might hold this ceremony. Old churches, underground crypts, places with significance. Meanwhile, I'll keep you under watch. They'll try to lure you, or worse, snatch you. Claire's knuckles turned white around the journal. Then let's not give them the chance. They spent the next hour mapping out locations from the city's archives, ancient buildings rumored to have catacombs beneath them, abandoned sanctuaries with hidden passages. A pattern emerged near the outskirts of the city, where older architecture still stood in disrepair. Outside, night had fallen completely, the streets shining under the faint glow of street lamps. A hush settled in the apartment, broken only by the rustling of pages and the scratch of pens on paper. Both of them felt the storm closing in, a quiet, inexorable force. With every clue they uncovered, the dread intensified. The cult was cunning, well-connected, and had been planning this final ceremony for who knew how long. Michael and Claire were just two people caught in a tide of malevolent history, but they wouldn't back down. Before Michael left, he touched Claire's shoulder gently. I'll check these sites tomorrow. Stay safe tonight. Keep the doors locked. Call me if anything seems off." She nodded, forcing a small, brave smile. As he stepped out into the hallway, they both understood. The final pieces were falling into place, and time was running dangerously short. Chapter 10. Under the Temple. The next evening found Michael and Claire creeping through an abandoned cathedral on the east side of the city. The massive wooden doors groaned as they pushed them open, revealing a cavernous interior littered with debris. Stained glass windows had been shattered long ago, letting moonlight spill in uneven shafts across the dusty floor. They had tracked the cult's presence here through old city records and hints in Marianne's notes. Beneath this cathedral's main sanctuary lay a network of tunnels, places once used for religious rites, or so the rumors claimed. Elliot was stationed outside with backup, though the official word was that they were investigating an anonymous tip. He was half convinced Michael had lost it, chasing ghosts, but Michael's voice had carried enough conviction that Elliot gave them a small team for support, albeit with grumbling. As Claire shone a flashlight around, she noticed carvings in the stone walls, partially eroded by time. These shapes, they looked like the symbols from the murders. Michael ran his fingertips over the grooves. The air was heavy, carrying a faint stench of mildew and something metallic. Blood, perhaps. His gut twisted. This is it. They ventured deeper until they found a narrow stairway spiraling down. Claire's heart thudded. This was the point of no return. She wondered if her mother had stood here once, scanning the same gloom, sensing an ancient nameless horror below. At the bottom, an expansive chamber opened up, lit by guttering candles set in iron sconces. Michael's grip tightened on his flashlight. This place was still in use. The echo of dripping water magnified every sound. Then they heard chanting, low, rhythmic, coming from a hallway to the left. Claire's pulse jumped. She shot Michael a panicked look, but he nodded, determined. They edged along the wall, following the chanting. The corridor ended at a high-arched entrance to a smaller room. Inside, robed figures circled a stone altar, chanting in a language neither of them recognized. Symbols gleamed, drawn in something dark and wet. One figure lifted a jagged ceremonial knife. Another began to read from a tattered book, voice echoing in the chamber. Claire's breath caught when she saw a battered young woman tied to the altar, eyes wide with terror. Michael's instincts roared. He signaled Claire to stay back, then lunged into the room, gun raised. "Police! Don't move!" Chaos erupted. The robed figures scattered. Some hissed in strange tongues. Others rushed at Michael with surprising ferocity. Claire ducked behind a broken column, heart hammering. She refused to cower. She had come too far. One robed cultist lunged at Michael with the ceremonial knife. He dodged, firing a shot that ricocheted off the stone wall. Another shot took the cultist down. The chanting grew frantic. In the flickering candlelight, Claire caught a glimpse of the leader, a tall figure with an ornate mask, voice echoing with eerie command. "Bring the chosen one," the masked leader roared. "Complete the circle." Suddenly, strong arms seized Claire from behind. She yelped, dropping her flashlight. A robed figure hissed near her ear, dragging her toward the altar. Anger and raw fear flooded her. She stomped backward, her heel connecting with the figure's shin. He loosened his grip just enough for her to twist away. Michael kicked away another cultist, then rushed toward Claire. Blood pounded in his ears. The voices of the dead pressed in on him, urging him to stop the ritual at all costs. He fired again, covering Claire as she broke free. In a swirl of robes, the masked leader snatched the ceremonial knife from the floor. "The bloodline must spill," he bellowed, lunging at Claire. Michael intercepted, grappling with the leader. The blade scraped across his coat, narrowly missing flesh. Candlelight sent shadows dancing over the walls. The final blow came when Michael knocked the leader down, the knife clattering to the stone floor. The cultists who remained conscious scrambled to flee. One by one, they disappeared into hidden tunnels. Claire hurried to the altar, untying the young woman, who sobbed in relief. Sirens echoed from above now, as Elliot and the backup officers stormed the cathedral. In the chaos, the masked leader lay on the cold stone, eyes burning with hatred. "You cannot stop what has already begun," he rasped, before spitting blood and fainting. Michael stood over him, panting. Claire steadied the rescued woman, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They'd disrupted the ritual, but had they destroyed the society? Candles sputtered, filling the space with acrid smoke. She could barely catch her breath, mind whirling. She was safe. For now. Michael's eyes locked on hers, 1,000 unspoken fears and relief flooding between them. They had crossed into darkness and emerged alive. But the shadows felt closer than ever. Chapter 11. Healing Wounds. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds in Michael's small apartment. Dust motes drifted lazily, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the previous night. He sat on the edge of his couch, gingerly rolling up his shirt sleeve to inspect the shallow cut from the cult leader's blade. It stung, but it was nothing compared to the mental exhaustion weighing him down. He still heard faint echoes in his mind. The final words of victims scattered across the city. The frantic pleas of the young woman they'd saved. Usually, his curse was a relentless tide, but now it felt muted. For the first time in a long time, he sensed a peculiar quietness, as if the spirits he heard had been soothed by the ritual's disruption. A knock at the door made him jolt. He opened it to find Claire, her eyes heavy with fatigue but lit by determination. "Hey," she said softly. "Elliot told me you were banged up. Mind if I come in?" Michael stepped aside. "Sure." She took in the humble surroundings. Clean enough, but sparse, with case files stacked on every available surface. A half-eaten sandwich lay forgotten on the kitchen counter. The aura of restlessness in the space reminded her of how unsettled Michael's life must be. They settled on the couch. Claire looked down at her hands. "The woman we rescued is stable. She's shaken but alive. The cult members we apprehended are in custody. Elliot said the leader is refusing to talk." Michael nodded. "He'll keep quiet. They always do, but at least we stopped that ritual." A slight tremor passed through Claire. "For now, do we know if there are more of them out there? More branches of this society?" Michael exhaled heavily. "Could be. But we've cut off a significant chunk of their operation. Their resources took a hit. They won't have the advantage of secrecy. Everyone's eyes are on them now." Claire's shoulders sagged with relief. "So, we did it." A silence fell, filled with the residue of shared trauma and the relief of having survived. Michael studied her, noticing the faint bruise on her arm where a cultist had grabbed her. It angered him more than he expected. "How are you holding up?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Better than I thought I would. I can't stop replaying last night, though. I keep seeing that knife." He reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. "You were brave, Claire. I'm sorry this all happened. If your mother had known how it would turn out..." Claire squeezed his hand, tears glistening. "I think Mom was trying to protect me in her own messed up way. I hated her for keeping secrets, but maybe I understand her now. She was in over her head. I guess I was too." Michael nodded. He realized his own secrets, the final words of the dead, were something he still couldn't fully share, not even with Claire. Yet he felt closer to her than he'd been to anyone in a long time. She shifted, rubbing her temples. "I'm planning to go through the rest of her notes, maybe piece together what's left. Then I'll decide what to do with them. Maybe hand them over to the police or an expert who can keep them from being misused." "Good idea. My superiors will want that. The more we learn, the better we can prevent a resurgence." Claire managed a tired smile. "And you? How does it feel not to have the dead whispering at you about the next killing?" He blinked, taken aback. It was as though she saw straight into him. He'd never told her explicitly about his ability, but she sensed the weight he carried. "I guess it's quieter. I can breathe." A sympathetic understanding flickered in her gaze. "Good. You deserve a little peace." For a long moment they sat together in silence. Two people who had stood on the edge of a nightmare and come back changed. Outside, the city carried on, unaware of how close it had come to another macabre tragedy. Eventually, Claire said, I should go. Elliot wants me to make a statement for the report. She paused, standing near the door. Thank you, Michael, for everything. He stood as well, offering a short nod. Thank you for trusting me. I couldn't have done this alone. They parted, an unspoken promise lingering between them, that even though they had faced down darkness, there was hope for something else, something warmer and human beyond the shadows. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time it didn't feel entirely hopeless. Chapter 12. Sunrise After the Storm. A week later, Claire walked through the quiet city park at dawn. The sky was streaked with pastel shades of pink and gold, the sun finally breaking free after days of heavy clouds. She'd come here to think, to absorb the reality that life continued even after the darkest nights. Her mother's manuscript was now archived by the police, with copies given to experts in arcane history. A small measure of relief settled in Claire's chest, knowing the cult's blueprint for murder and immortality was out of easy reach. Still, she felt pangs of regret whenever she thought of her mother, how a lifetime of obsession had led them all to the brink. She paused by a small pond, watching ducks paddle across the glassy surface. This was peace. Simple, unremarkable peace. She closed her eyes, letting the morning light warm her face. Claire? Came a familiar voice. She turned to see Michael approaching, hands in his pockets. He looked better rested than before, though faint lines of exhaustion remained. How'd you find me? She asked with a half smile. Elliot told me you liked this park, Michael said, returning her smile briefly. They stood side by side, watching the sun's rays ripple over the water. How are you feeling? She asked softly. He hesitated. Different. Like there's a weight off my shoulders, but also a void. The constant pressure from my instincts is quieter. Part of me wonders if I'll be the same detective without it. You will be, she said gently. Maybe an even better one, now that you're not haunted 24/7. Michael looked away, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. We'll see. They strolled along the path, early joggers passing by, the world waking up to a new day. Claire shared her plans. She would wrap up her mother's estate and possibly dive back into her own career, maybe explore a future on her terms. For the first time, she felt freedom rather than fear. I'm thinking about traveling, she said suddenly. Just for a bit. See if I can find out more about my mother's research origins. Maybe close any remaining loops. Michael glanced at her, both concern and admiration shining in his eyes. That sounds like a good idea. Just be careful. I will. And you? She asked. What's next for Detective Shaw? He chuckled softly, the sound almost foreign. I'll keep doing my job, catching bad guys, trying to prevent the next crisis. But maybe I'll take a break now and then, try living like a normal human being. They reached the end of the path, the city's skyline reflecting in the water behind them. Claire turned to face him. I guess this is goodbye for now? Michael shrugged, a gentle look in his eyes. Not necessarily. Stay in touch, Claire. Let me know when you get back from your travels. She nodded, emotion knotting in her throat. Thank you. For believing me. For helping me. I might not be here without you. He lifted a hand, brushing her cheek lightly in a gesture that held more intimacy than any words could manage. Then he let it drop, stepping back, giving her space. Take care of yourself. A breeze stirred, carrying the scent of fresh grass. Claire nodded, smiling sadly, before turning away. Each step felt like walking out of the darkest chapter of her life, leaving the monstrous shadows behind. Michael watched her go, the early sun casting a halo around her figure. For a moment, regret tugged at him, but it was tempered by hope. They'd both earned their next chapter, one not dictated by murder, cults, or ghosts. In the park's hush, the city rose to a new day, birds singing as if nothing had ever been wrong. And maybe, just maybe, for Michael Shaw and Claire Emerson, that was true. They had endured the storm, cut down the monsters in the dark, and emerged with the promise of a sunrise that felt like a genuine, hard-won peace.